from Nebraska.
Madam President, I ask that the quorum call be vitiated, please.
Without objection.
Madam President, I rise today to express my strong frustration and the frustration of Nebraskans with the Senate's current debate. Like many of my colleagues, I spent the last 5 weeks traveling my state and meeting with constituents. I held over a dozen listening sessions in communities all across Nebraska. Not a single Nebraskan told me to go back to Washington and vote to limit free speech. Not a single Nebraskan told me to come here and play politics or take show votes. The message that I received from almost every Nebraskan was the same: get something done. Turn the economy around. Deal with overregulation. Help control the costs of health care. Help businesses create jobs. Prevailing concern with the economy and weak job growth, that exists all across our country. According to several leading economists, 225,000 jobs were supposed to be created last month. Instead, the number of jobs created was just 142,000. The real unemployment rate, those who are unemployed or underemployed, that remains unacceptably high. That's at nearly 12%. That's 19 million Americans who are out of work or who want to work more hours. It's a disgrace that the United States Senate is not debating policies that will help them. Instead, we're debating a bill to limit free speech. It's no wonder that the American people have such a poor opinion of Congress. Seriously, what are we doing here? Well, here in Washington, those in power are more concerned with winning elections so they can stay in power than with actually governing and making tough decisions that will protect our country and that will help our families. That's what we're doing here today. Another show vote, another soundbite that's engineered by campaign strategists. And those guys, they don't have any interest in sound policy. So I'd like to address the two proposals before the Senate this week: a resolution to amend the Bill of Rights and campaign legislation that's targeting women voters. The resolution offered by the senator from New Mexico is, I believe, a clear attack on the First Amendment and a series of recent Supreme Court rulings. The measure grants unlimited authority to Congress and state legislatures to criminalize speech on any platform, and that includes the internet. This proposal guts the First Amendment and the principles of free speech that have endured since the Bill of Rights, since that was ratified in 1791. It further empowers incumbent politicians to make decisions with less accountability. It muffles the voices of private citizens. It's perverse that the United States Senate is actually devoting time to debating a constitutional amendment that would actually diminish democratic participation, that would decrease freedom. What have we become? In a letter to the Senate Judiciary Committee, the ACLU wrote that the proposed amendment, quote, would severely limit the First Amendment, lead directly to government censorship of political speech, and result in a host of unintended consequences that would undermine the goals the amendment has been introduced to advance, namely encouraging vigorous political dissent and providing voice to the voiceless, which we, of course, support. Well, the ACLU isn't exactly an ally of the Republican Party, but their letter shows that there is broad concern over this poorly crafted resolution. I urge my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to stand up for free speech, to stand up for democratic participation, and to reject this resolution. Madam President, I would also like to address the issue of equal pay and paycheck fairness legislation. Make no mistake, some women in this country continue to struggle with gender-based pay discrimination. Equal pay for equal work is a principle that I strongly support. With 60% of women working as primary breadwinners, lost wages hurt families and single women alike. Republicans fully agree that gender-based pay discrimination in the workplace is unacceptable. In April, I worked with Senator Collins, Senator Ayotte, and Senator Murkowski on a reasonable proposal to modernize key portions of the 51-year-old Equal Pay Act. Our proposal prevents retaliation against employees who inquire about, discuss, or disclose their salaries. In fact, one of the President's April executive orders also deals with non-retaliation. That suggests that this is an area where we can agree and where we can work together. Our proposal also reinforces current law, which prohibits pay discrimination based on gender, and it requires employers to notify employees of their rights. Finally, it addresses the opportunity gap, or the need to provide both men and women with good-paying jobs. It consolidates duplicative job training programs. It provides federal grants to states for the creation of industry-led partnerships. This program is meant to provide women and men underrepresented in industries that report worker shortages with the skills that they need to compete. I believe that this proposal could pass the Senate, Madam President. It's reasonable, it's targeted, it's a serious solution. But instead, we have a Senate that is laser-focused on election year politics, on bills no Republican can support, and on bills that even some Democrats reject. The majority leader does not appear to have any interest in putting bills on the floor that can pass, bills that we can work together on. That idea doesn't fit into that election year playbook. At the end of the day, Madam President, that's raw politics. That's all it is. Nebraskans expect more. Americans expect more. They expect us to do our jobs, to work together, to offer solutions, to debate, to amend, and to vote. There are so many proposals that I would love to vote on. You know, sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, but we should be voting. We have to start meaningful debate. We have to start taking votes. And they better be real votes. That's the only way that we are going to do our jobs. That is the only way that we will be held accountable by our constituents. We should be tackling those very important issues that we spoke to our neighbors and friends about when we were at home traveling our states during the August recess. Enough of the sound bites. Enough of the show votes. Enough speaking to cameras. Let's listen to the American people. Let's get back back to the United States Senate that we all admired when we were in school and we read about our country's history. As students, we studied those serious and many times those very heated debates that took place on this floor. As senators, we may not always agree on what's the best policy, but we better start doing our jobs. We need to return to debating real policy that addresses the very, very real needs of the American people. Thank you, Madam President. I yield the floor.